The house you live in belongs to the whole family, right? I will never forget the look on my sister Elise's face when she said that, with a radiant smile as if she were declaring some universal truth. Those words turned 20 years of hard work and bloodstained sacrifice into dust in a single second. That day I was sitting in the dining room of my parents' house. It was our monthly weekend family dinner. Steam rose from my mother's signature roast chicken, and the cheap red wine my father had opened in high spirits shimmered in his glass. Across the table, Elise and her husband, Cole, were tending to their 2 children, chatting about nothing in particular. It was an ordinary evening, or at least it used to be. Once upon a time, it had been a peaceful and precious moment. Everything began to go wrong halfway through the meal. During a casual conversation about work, my father turned to me and asked, "By the way, is business going well?" "Yes," I replied. "Thanks to everyone's support, we've secured a big contract and the business is stable. And also..." I paused for a breath, then shared the piece of news I'd been holding on to. I had no intention of boasting, I only wanted to share my relief. Actually, last month I finally finished paying off the mortgage. 20 years. It was a long road, but at last the house is completely mine. In that instant, the cheerful clatter of the dining room went silent. The only sound was the high-pitched clang of my 7-year-old nephew's fork hitting his plate. The first to speak wasn't my father. His voice carried a sigh more than words, as if he already foresaw the trouble ahead. "I see." My mother tried to smile. "That's wonderful," she said, though her eyes flicked toward Elise as if to warn her not now. But it was already too late. Elise leaned forward, eyes gleaming like a predator that had found its prey. "Wow, that's amazing. Wait a second, does that mean the house is completely free now? No mortgage, no liens, nothing?" Next to her, Cole laughed. "No way, Vanessa. You get to live in that mansion and only pay property tax? That's insane." But Elise's interest was on a completely different level. She set down her knife and fork with a deliberate clink. "Then that means the house isn't just your personal asset anymore, right? It's our family's shared property now, isn't it?" Those words were a declaration of war. I quietly set my wine glass down, feeling a chill spread through my fingertips. My voice came out calm but cold. "Elise, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't make bad jokes. That house is my personal property, bought with the money I earned at my company. Nothing more, nothing less." Elise shrugged, feigning innocence. "I'm not joking. We're family, aren't we? Families help each other. You're single and don't even use half that big house. We're struggling with 2 kids in a tiny apartment. Isn't it obvious who could make better use of it?" At that absurd logic, I replied evenly, "If you have that much to complain about, maybe try cutting back on a few luxuries. That watch on your wrist looks pretty expensive." She stroked it proudly. "This? Oh, that was a graduation gift from Mom and Dad. You spent your money on your motorcycle back then, remember? I've always liked nice things like this. Not that I can afford anything lovely since getting married." At that, my mother spoke hesitantly. "Vanessa, maybe you could at least think about what Elise is saying. Just imagine how happy Dylan and Tessa would be if they could play in that garden." "Mom, what are you saying?" My voice rose before I could stop it. I couldn't believe she'd taken Elise's side. My father avoided my gaze and drank his wine in silence. That silence was his quiet agreement. I realized then I was completely alone. Elise, sensing victory, smiled triumphantly. "See? Mom and Dad understand. You're successful, Vanessa. Buying another house wouldn't be hard for you. Sharing a little wouldn't hurt anyone." "Sharing?" I let out a sharp laugh. "Do you have any idea what every pillar and every brick of that house is made of? 20 years of blood and sweat. And all the time you spent living comfortably while I worked to build it. You're telling me to share that?" My voice was steel. Even the children flinched. Elise's confident smile vanished, replaced by anger. "What's with that attitude? Blood and sweat. Don't exaggerate. You turned your hobby into a job and lived however you wanted." "However I wanted?" I repeated. For the first 5 years after I founded Apex Velocity Motors, I didn't take a single day off. While you were picking your wedding dress with Cole, I was covered in oil and mud fixing bikes until midnight. Elise fell silent. I turned toward my parents. "Dad, do you really think Elise's logic makes sense? You're honestly telling me to hand over the house I spent 20 years building to someone who hasn't lifted a finger to earn it?" My father finally spoke, his voice heavy. Vanessa, Elise and Cole have children. You're on your own, but they have a future. Try to see it like an adult. Those words severed the last thread in my heart. I see. So that's your answer. I stood, placed my napkin on the table and picked up my handbag. No anger. No sadness. Just cold resignation. All right. Now I know exactly what the word family means to you. Wait, my mother cried. I didn't turn around. No, Mom. The conversation's over. Forever. I closed the door behind me. The dull thud marked the end of my old life. I sped down the coastal road on my vintage Harley, back to my fortress. After parking in the garage, I opened the heavy teakwood door and stepped inside. The living room was silent. Beyond the window, the night sea stretched endlessly, calm and unbroken. This was the culmination of my effort. My sanctuary, untouchable by anyone. I brewed a cup of coffee and sank into the sofa. Then my phone began to vibrate wildly. The screen lit up with calls and messages. Dad, Mom, Elise, Cole, even distant relatives who never reached out. When I opened the messaging app, a flood of venom poured in. You're heartless. I didn't raise you to be like this. Do the right thing for the family. You got successful and abandoned everyone. They were trying to paint me as greedy, cold-hearted, a woman consumed by her own success. An ordinary person might have broken down. Or fired back in anger. But I am Vanessa, 48 years old, CEO of Apex Velocity Motors. A businesswoman who's survived countless storms. I took a sip of coffee and began taking screenshots. One by one. Sender timestamp message. No emotion, just evidence. Their words would become my shield. When I finished, I stood by the window watching the waves. Why do they think they can twist someone else's life to fit their convenience? The answer is simple. They never knew the real story of my life. Images flashed in my mind, 20 years ago in a small rented warehouse that smelled of oil. That's where Apex Velocity Motors was born. My father had sneered. A woman like you could never run a motorcycle shop. And Elise had laughed. They could never understand what I saw in that block of metal. What I wanted to create wasn't just a vehicle. It was freedom. The wind slicing against your skin, the heartbeat that syncs with the engine, the beauty of a machine that gleams like fire in the morning sun. That was my dream. My one and only shining goal. Even when the bank loan officer laughed, if it were a shop for women, maybe my spirit never broke. I swore to myself, gender doesn't matter. I would prove that true passion can move people's hearts. The road wasn't easy. I will never forget the day my first customer, upon receiving the bike I had restored, cried and whispered, "It's like my dream has taken shape." And I will never forget the day the real estate agent hesitated. A house like this, just for a single woman? I didn't waver. I spread out my flawless business plan and said, I'm the CEO of a company that sells dreams. Someone who can't make her own dream come true could never help others achieve theirs. That's why I'll make this castle mine. The walls of that house are proof of my conviction. This whole space is the physical trace of 20 years of dreams. I'm no longer at an age where I need protection, I whispered once, staring at my reflection in the window pane. It's time to protect what's mine with my own hands. This house is my soul. I'll never let anyone take it away for the sake of convenience or emotion. A fierce flame of determination burned inside me. 2 weeks after the stormy dinner, the barrage of messages from my family stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Perhaps they'd realized how unreasonable their demands were, and given up. That faint hope began to grow until a Saturday morning broke my calm. I woke to the deafening roar of a truck engine and looked out the window in disbelief. A massive moving truck sat in my driveway. Movers were unloading familiar sofas and dining tables. Standing with her arms crossed and directing the operation like she owned the place was my sister, Elise. The sofa goes right in the center of the living room, she instructed. Those boxes go to the kids' rooms. Be careful not to scratch anything, handle them gently. Beside her, Cole stood awkward while their children froze, bewildered. I opened the front door in my bathrobe and stepped onto the porch. Elise, what on earth are you doing here? I demanded. The movers froze mid-motion. Elise turned slowly as if she'd been waiting for my arrival. No remorse touched her face, only a calculating smile that said, "About time you showed up." "Oh, good morning," she said cheerfully. "As you can see, we're moving in. From now on, our family will be living here." For a moment her brazenness stole my breath. She actually intended to seize the house, believing that by physically moving in I would be forced to give in. I swallowed my anger and addressed the bewildered movers first. "Excuse me, what moving company are you with?" The foreman, suspicious, answered. I nodded and turned to the crowd. "Everyone listen carefully. This land and building are the personal property of me, Vanessa Clark. The couple standing there have unlawfully entered my private property without my permission." Expressions shifted. The foreman glanced between Cole and me. "Hey, what's the deal here, Cole? Didn't you say your sister approved this move?" Cole stammered. Elise blushed and snapped. "She is my sister. This is a family matter. None of your business." That statement was the clincher. I quietly took out my phone. "If any of you set foot on my property another step, I will call the police right now. The charge will be criminal trespass. This is an offense in the act." The words had a devastating effect. The foreman, with professional instinct, saw this wasn't a simple family spat. "Everyone stop. Put the furniture back on the truck. Hurry." Ignoring Elise's panicked cries, he apologized. "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. We'll withdraw immediately. We'll bill Mr. Cole for today's dispatch fee." Within 10 minutes the truck was gone. Elise and Cole stood in stunned silence. I watched them with a cold gaze. The first round was mine. Elise exploded in anger at the failed plan, but Cole pulled her toward the car. "Stop it, Elise. Let's go back to Mom and Dad's place. We'll rethink the plan." Rethink the plan. Those words proved they had not given up. They sped away, Elise glaring at me with a snake-like hatred. I acted at once. I called the security company and set the motion detection sensitivity on every camera to maximum. Then I went to the garage and gently placed my hand on my beloved Harley. "It's okay," I told it. "If they lay a finger on you, I'll make them pay, more than a single finger." That night my premonition came true. An emergency alert flashed on my phone. Suspicious motion detected in the garden area. I pulled up the surveillance footage on my study PC and watched, sickeningly calm. Elise and Cole, dressed in black, were using shovels to tear up the flower beds I'd cultivated. When they finished, Cole pointed to the garage shutter. Elise smiled, cruel and small. They approached the garage with metal bars and smashed the control panel for the electronic lock. They kicked the shutter, striking where my Harley would be. My blood ran cold. I wanted to rush outside and beat them senseless. But I restrained myself. If I ran out, then they'd twist it into a family dispute. This wasn't where the battle would be won. I clenched my teeth and waited for the footage to finish. Irrefutable evidence. The next morning I sat in my legal advisor Nathan Brooks's office. He watched the footage on a large monitor and, when it ended, spoke quietly, his voice laced with anger. "This is terrible. It's far beyond a family quarrel. Vanessa, if you want, we can have them sent to jail." I nodded. "Yes, Nathan. This is a clear crime. Let their punishment be carried out properly through legal channels." I explained the plan I'd prepared. File a police report with the video evidence. Summon them for questioning on charges of property damage and trespass. Simultaneously send a civil notice for damages, $4,000. If they refuse to pay, we would release an edited version of the footage on my company's social media as a public warning. Nathan smiled slightly. Official legal pressure on the surface, public exposure underneath. You really do know how to fight. That afternoon I filed the report. The detective said, "This is serious. We'll begin the investigation immediately and summon the suspects for questioning." A week later the storm hit the Millers. Officers visited their home. Elise and Cole were taken for questioning. Hours later, exhausted, they returned to find a thick certified letter waiting. Cole opened it with trembling hands, his face drained. The documents, photographs from that night, were evidence in a $4,000 claim for damages. My mother picked up a photo and crumpled into tears. The letter ended with Nathan's cold line. "If no sincere response is received within 72 hours, we will execute all legal measures, including publication of the footage." My mother called me the next day. "Vanessa, please reconsider. If Elise and Cole are arrested, Dylan and Tessa will be labeled children of criminals for life. Do you really want that?" As expected, she brought up the kids. Her distorted love made my harm seem trivial. I answered calmly but firmly, "It is not I who will ruin their future. Elise and Cole committed the crime. If you truly care about the grandchildren, make them properly pay for what they did. Before she could reply, I ended the call and blocked her number. After that, contact ceased. Less than an hour before the deadline, a short message arrived from Cole. We understand. We will pay the money. One line, complete surrender. The battle for my castle ended in my total victory. Word came that the Millers scrambled to raise $4,000. Elise and Cole begged our parents for help. Mom and Dad refused to touch their nest egg. You reap what you sow, they said. Elise sold designer bags and jewelry to scrape the amount together. Humiliation for a proud woman. But a just consequence, I thought, for attempting to steal another's home. A few days later, $4,000 hit my account. Nathan's office sent copies of signed affidavits. Elise and Cole vowed never to approach my residence or place of employment again. That single sheet drew an eternal border between us. That weekend I made a modest toast, steak, a bottle of wine, and lifted my glass toward the garage where my Harley rested. Cheers to our castle. Then a final message arrived from Elise. I never want to see your face again. I laughed. What a coincidence, I murmured and deleted her contact. A year passed. Calm days flowed through my castle. One clear Sunday while I polished the bike, my mother sent a short message. I'm nearby. Only 5 minutes, I replied. A sedan pulled up. My mother stepped out alone and stood at the gate, the border between us. She said quietly, "What a lovely house. I can see all your hard work in it." She slipped a small paper bag through the gate and left. Inside was an imperfect homemade apple pie and a single card. In a childlike hand, "I'm sorry." The pie tasted of home, sweet with a little salt, my mother's specialty and my favorite. I took a bite, looked up at the clear, endless blue sky, swung my leg over the Harley and started the engine. From my castle onto a new road. The future had only just begun.